Welcome back to Total Freedom Radio, the show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. And you're joining me on KRRB Radio, Revelation Radio, .net. And after we get through on the radio, we put it up on YouTube, Rumble, and Brighteon. And this series is chock full of all kinds of pictures and visual elements. So after you listen to it, jump on over there and watch it, like, share, and subscribe. And let us know what you think in the comments. Run on over to rinalyn.com and drop your donations if you want to keep great content coming. It keeps me from having to do a lot of extra side work on the nights and weekends where I can get some more of these made. And since we got a big evening, let's just go ahead and get started. All right. Witchcraft is not dead in England. At the ancient ruins of Stonehenge, Druid priests still perform ancient rites in the same way their ancestors did. The sacrificing of animals and occasionally people is still not uncommon. Even in our time, animals are sacrificed on Halloween in Europe and in the Philippines and as well in the USA. Don't think because we're in America that we miss out on that because it goes on more than people would realize. All right, in the USA, Halloween did not become popular until the mid 1800s when large groups of Irish and Scottish immigrants introduced their specific customs for celebrating Halloween. Now, I'm of Irish descent and don't think that, that didn't come through. I had to learn that this was something that God didn't want us to do and stop doing it. In 1965, the Satanic Bible was first published. I used to have one of these and I read it and it was interesting read. 4 years later, in 1969, the first Church of Satan was formed by Anton LeVey. With the revival of the old Celtic style witchcraft in Missouri and North Carolina, Satanism and witchcraft has been on the rise in the USA. Of course, that went on. An offset from that was the Temple of Set by, I think it was Michael Lucchino did that. But if you're looking at the pictures here, you'll see pictures of Anton LeVey and inside his church, they have upside down crosses, everything's red and black, they have a Baphomet in the floor. Very, very interesting and different from what our concept of a church is. I got a little picture down here on the left for those on you the radio. It's a little witch, and it says, "Remember your ancestor on Samhain night, blessed Samhain," and that's what they call Halloween. Witchcraft and sorcery are very real, and I want you to understand that. The number of occult related murders has been on the increase in this country for more than a generation. One of the most celebrated occult dates is Halloween, and it's celebrated in this country on October 31st. On college campuses and universities today, Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible often outsells the Bible itself. And I just interviewed a gentleman a couple days ago. It'll be coming out. He talks about child trafficking, child grooming, Craig Mickle. But one of the pieces of information that we'll bring in there is that more children go missing in the fall, but the most go missing in the month of October. Imagine that. One can't possibly have something to do with the other. Now, could it, folks? All right. Anton LaVey has three children, Carla LeVey, Zena LeVey, and Satan Xerxes Carnacki LeVey. And if you'll look up here, if you're looking on YouTube, Brighteon, or Rumble, I've got a picture side by side. Now, I'm not saying this is so. I'm saying I've heard it. Got a picture of Taylor Swift beside Zena LeVey. Incredibly, incredibly uh, looks a lot like this woman. It has said that she is her mother. It has said that she's a clone of her. I can't possibly know any of that. I just thought it was interesting and thought I would share it. All right. And if you'll look at Anton LaVey's son and all the symbolism that he has tattooed on his body, very interesting. This concept of his father basically must have went down through the children. Carla LeVey there's a picture of her on here wearing devil horns at the 2012 Black X Mass Show. And she is a radio presenter, a religious leader, and founder of First Satanic Church. So, see, it's still growing and it's going on down through the family line, just like sometimes some godly people do. Now, here is something that I clipped out of that book from way back when. It's the 9 Satanic Statements. And this comes straight from the Satanic Bible written in 1969. 1. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. 2. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams, which is what they call the thought of going to heaven. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self deceit. Now, don't forget that the Greek name for wisdom was Sophia. It's where we get the word sophisticated, philosophy, those sorts of things. But that is the term for Greek wisdom, which means the wisdom outside of the knowledge of God. It's the false religion's wisdom, if you will. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrate. Now, God tells us to love even the unlovable, right? So this is a complete inversion of that. Number 5, Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Again, the exact opposite of the teaching of the New Testament. 6, Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. These are the people who want to cut off all aid for those in need and just, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. All right, number 7, Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. So we're not made in the image of God. We're not something special. We're not the highest creation. We're just another animal, and probably worse than the rest of them. And I gotta tell you, I'm kind of leaning toward agreeing with that part of it. All right. Number 8, Satan represents all of the so called sins as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. Now, that is the lie of the enemy because we all know too much drinking, too much drug use, too much, um, let's say the S word. There's all kinds of consequences. There's diseases, there's pancreatic cancer, there's cirrhosis of the liver, there's just wasted lives. Just literally wasted lives. So, but he's saying that it all leads to gratification. Doesn't Never talks about the dissipation, never talks about the cost to society, to a family, to a wife, to a children. Um, Number 9, Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had as he's kept it in business all these years. Now, this is the exact 9 statements from the Satanic Bible. So we'll break some of this stuff down as we progress in this class. We're going to get more and more detailed and break stuff down more and more and more, and these same sorts of ideas will come out, and you'll see that they came from the beginning to the end. Right? Le Anton LeVey's last words were said to be, oh my, what have I done? There's something very wrong. There's something very wrong. There's something very wrong." I've also read other, last-minute statements from other occultists and other people who were avidly against God, and they're pretty similar. So, basically, maybe at that last moment of death when they realize what's coming for them, and I've got a very personal story I could share on that. I won't on the radio, but, I have seen that in action. Alright? Because we're talking about such dark subjects, I wanna dedicate this entire class to the Lord. I wanna dedicate it to raising the bar of knowledge and healing hurting people in spiritual warfare, just like this whole show is about. Um, but after this manner, we've heard what their thoughts is. We're gonna pray ye. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Now, that's a complete inversion of the satanic thought of gratification, glory, self glory only for those who deserve it, right? All right, what did Paul have to say about this? Paul warned the Galatian Christians, who were a Celtic people, not to keep their old pagan holidays. Paul seems to wonder if they kept the pagan holidays, Halloween being the chief one, if they were truly Christian, or did he waste his time even preaching to them? And we're not taught that the Galatians is talking about Halloween, right? But it is. Galatians 4:8-11 says this. However, at that time, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those by nature who are no gods. But now that you have come to know God, or rather come to be known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you desire to be enslaved all over again? You observe days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that perhaps I have labored in vain. And what he's saying is here, have I wasted my time? Because you're going right back into the things I've been telling you to get out of. So if Paul Paul, if the celebration of Halloween among the Galatian Christians so shocked him that he didn't know if they were truly saved, should we be practicing it today? You guys spend some time and thought and prayer this week on that idea and see what you need to make changes for your family, maybe. All right, now we're going to talk about a little bit more of Wicca. Wicca is old time Druidism. We call it witchcraft. There's all kinds of names for it, sometimes the craft. But Yule, we know it as the time around Christmas time. But Yule is also a name of Odin. So let's discuss him. Yule is the pagan celebration of the winter solstice observed on December 23rd through 25th. The ancient Romans practiced Yuletide under the name of Saturnalia. The people of Scandinavia began to worship one of their ancestors named Odin as their chief god during Yule. Remember, way back one of the first couple classes we talked about um, worshiping of the ancestors, making the Teraphim, that sort of thing, and what the purpose was to contact your ancestor. Well, this is what happened here. Animals such as dogs, horses, and chickens were sacrificed to the gods and elves. Now, catch that word because we're going to be talking a lot about elves. It's in this time of year, you're going to see elves everywhere. But the worship of Odin required human sacrifice. Doesn't that you maybe had an option, it required a human sacrifice. Lesser items like bread or butter were set out as sacrifices to, guess who? The elves. The most ancient legends describe Odin as a sorcerer who lost one eye while performing a ritual. Ever heard of the one eyed god? Goes back to this. He became able to see through the eyes of his raven spirit guides. Later, Odin was worshipped as the supreme god in place of the Lord. It should have been obvious if he was a sorcerer and had to do a ritual to obtain this power, he must not have ever been the original creator god. He didn't have to do anything to obtain his power, it's just his. In Norse mythology, gods like Odin and the nature spirits called, you got it, elves, were worshipped. The gods were no doubt engrafted ancestor worship, just like we have already learned. And if you haven't watched those, go back and start from part one and come forward because this is literally it builds upon itself and builds upon itself, and again drills down, getting more and more detail. But you need that frame. The gods were no doubt engrafted ancestor worship. Norse mythology divided the universe into 9 worlds, and we'll talk about that. But for those of you that can see the pictures, we've got the one eyed god down here, Odin, with his raven spirits. We've got him with his wolves. We've got a t shirt here that says, Better to be a wolf of Odin than a lamb of God. And it's got a picture on there, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'm going to wait till we got a bigger one on here. You guys, again, go look at these pictures. All right, gods and elves. The Scandinavians believed the world directly north of the land where humans live was called Alfheimr, meaning the land of the elves. Alfheimr is also translated fairyland. This shows a direct connection between elves and fairies. And if you want to know more about that, if you got the book, go back to the chapter on paganism in the Middle Ages and for more details on nature spirits. Can't remember if we already did that or we're about to do that, but it's in this series. Directly north of Alfheimr is Asgard, the land of the gods. Asgard was Odin's home, and it's where Valhalla was located. I know you've heard that in cartoons and movies and stuff everywhere. The Celts considered mid autumn or Halloween to be the time that the veil between the worlds is thinnest. It's their New Year's. Halloween is the day that the dead may come back to visit or can be called upon by a ritual. And some people say that word Celtic, or it's other people, Celts, Celtic. That's how I learned it. So that's how I'll say it. All right, here's a prayer that they pray. And if I just ran onto this and didn't know any of this stuff, I wouldn't think anything about it. But I want you to catch all the things that we're teaching. Now, in the darkening of the year, the veil between the world wears thin, and those gone on ahead draw near. In the hours of quiet remembrance that the waning season brings, we may feel their whispered presence like the brush of a gentle wind. Now, listen to what they're talking about. This is the veil that's thin. It's a time of year where their ancestors can draw near. And you can even sometimes feel their presence like the brush of a gentle wind. There's a biblical precedence for that, but I can't think what it is. But they felt a breeze on them. And it was spirits. Right. Among the Slavs of Europe, the time the veil between the worlds is thinnest is their New Year's Day, but it's not mid autumn. It's the winter solstice or Yule. The Slavs call this Korkan. It is a time when the black god Chernobog and all the evil spirits are at their strongest. A few days later, when the days start getting longer, it's the birth of the new sun god or good god Kolida. Now think about this. We tend to think in America, we're a Christian nation, or have been, the time of what we would call Christmas time, that's the time we think of Jesus. That's the time everybody's got the mangers in their yard, although that's getting replaced by all kinds of other stuff. But to them, this is when the evil spirits are at their strongest. Do you ever wonder why they call the spirit of Christmas? And the alcohol comes out, the the greed comes out, the extra spending, the extra gluttony. Kind of goes back to some of this as well, because that is the time when it's their new year and it's their um, evil spirits are strongest. It's interesting that from Norse and Slavic paganism, we get the elves living in the world right above ours, in, you guessed it, the North Pole. And at Yuletide, or what we would call Christmas, the veil between the worlds is thinnest so that the elves and ghosts may come to visit, bringing with them gifts like healing from disease or punishments like death. Now, what do we put around our children now? I cringe every time I see this elf on the shelf. It's like they show up everywhere, and our children are being taught to revere these. They're being taught that they're benign. They're being taught that there's something fun, but they actually are elements of paganism and go all the way back to this Yule connection when the veils were the thinnest and they could come and visit like ghosts. The elf spirits are also called puka. They come to give gifts and healing to those they liked and hurt those they did not like putting switches or coal in stockings. But you wonder, was that all they did? The Scandinavians said that when a puka entered the home, one may hear the greeting of ho 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 from that puka or elf. Remind you of anything? This story intermingled with the legend of St. Nicholas. He was a 4th century bishop who would deliver toys to children around this time of year. It formed the legend of Santa Claus. Remember that Santa Claus is supposed to be a jolly old elf. And what does he say the minute he enters the room? Ho, ho, ho. So, see, a lot of these things that we grew up on and didn't think anything about is so totally benign, so totally, it just sends shivers of joy down us when we think about Santa Claus and his ho, ho, ho. But I really, really want to raise the bar of knowledge here of where this is rooted. And I know in my family, we had to make some real choices when we started learning this. Wasn't very popular, but we made them. All right, it's interesting also how the Norse god Odin changed into Santa. He still comes at Yule time or Christmas, but instead of coming on his 8-legged horse, he now rides a sleigh pulled by 8 reindeer. Now, if you want to know about the god of war, Odin, here's some characteristics of him. He's the supreme god of the Vikings. His weapon of choice was his magical spear Gugnir. He rides on an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, and Wednesday is named after the All-Father Odin. Some people spell it with a W, Woden. So Wednesday is Woden's day, basically. All the names of the days are actually named after gods. It's very interesting. We might do a little brief on that at one point. All right. The worship of Odin is now called anytime I can say this, Asteru. And some in modern times have tried to bring back the Old Norse religion. I heard a gentleman speak in Dallas that had been grown up in this, and he had some very interesting things to say. But for those of you that are able to see with the pictures, and again, go look, you'll look, the very first picture is a row of little statues. These are like the Teraphim. And then we have a necklace of the one-eyed god. We have the idols, the little pictures of the Norse god, Odin, Thor, and I don't remember the name of the other one. Right down here, I've got a book about Asteru, the native European spirituality. It's not just a European anymore, it is here in America. You'll see a ritual going on in one picture with the pagan priests, their red and white garments, and the fire pit. And then there's a statue of Odin or Woden on his throne with his ravens and his wolves. And then you'll see a cathedral, um, very phallic in design. Um, I used to know exactly where that was, and I did not look it up. My apologies, but you can look that up yourself. But this is a real thing going on. This is not Christianity. It's in opposition to Christianity. So let's look at that a little bit more. Here is the revival of Iceland's pagan religion in one picture, and you'll see that they're having it at night with torches, and they are revolving around what looks like a stone pillar. Right down on the left, I'm gonna try to describe this for the people on the radio, but I'm not gonna do it justice. But those of you who can see it, says that Vikings against white supremacy, taking back our Norse symbols from those who seek to corrupt them in the name of hate. Now it's two circles, and between the two circles there's ruins, and inside the circles there are conjoined three triangles. Now, I have seen people try to tell me that this this symbol is representing the Trinity, and I'm going to tell you right now it's not. And we'll break that down a little bit more in a little bit. But when you see these three triangles all interconnected, this is a symbol for Asteru. So you'll see this everywhere. I really want you to begin to open your eyes and look around as you travel and go places and see if you can see some of this symbolism. I think you'll be surprised. Then we've got a little wooden statue of Woden, looks remarkably like Gandalf, even with his staff. Hmm. All right. And then there's Odin's Chosen, a handbook of Asteru. I threw that in there just to kind of give you an idea. Right here is and I'm not sure I'm going to say this man's name right. Here's a quote from someone, Hilmar Orn Hilmarson. I don't, I'm familiar with the names up in that area, but here's some of his quotes. I believe in a higher power which appears to us in the multiplicity of nature and of human life. We have manifestations of certain primal forces which we regard as gods, and we have a division in the roles of our gods. These are powers that are visible, half visible, and sometimes invisible. One could have a long scholarly discussion on the role of individual gods, but in the end, this is a question of a feeling for the different aspects of life. And then he goes on to say, monotheism is one truth for the masses, polytheism is many truths for the individual. Now, monotheism is the belief in one God. Polytheism, poly means many, so it's a belief in many gods. And here on this page, for those that you can't see, I've got some symbolism of Asteru. We've got the Prometheus Greek god candle, which is basically a male torso with the arms, legs, and heads missing. Down on the bottom, you'll see the ancestor altar, like I've taught you way back when. And then one of the first shows, it's got the pictures, it's got the candles, it's got flowers, it's got the horn, it's got the crystals, it's got little statues, it's got a drink offering. All right. And then there's another one. It's got the horn of Odin. It has a bowl to hold probably the sacrificial blood. It has a star in a circle, a pentagram. It has a candle, it's got lots and lots of little statues, and it has, ruins on this table. Right, and then I was telling you about the symbolism on the T-shirt, and here it's blown up a little bit better, and you'll notice that it is, a death emblem, but it has multi faces. Now, do you remember back when we were first looking at angels, and we were looking at cherubim, and the Bible talks that they had the face of the man, the face of the ox, the face of, I think the eagle, and, oh, I don't remember right offhand, but you can go back and look at it. This is a type of that, only it's death. And notice on his head, up on the branches that's for his hair, he has those um, interlocked three triangles. Now, in the Bible, Jesus comes to bring life and life more abundantly. Enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Death comes through the enemy. Death was not something that God instituted. So whenever you see these death symbols, I don't care where you see them, understand, again, you've heard me say this a billion times, which bucket does it go in? And it's not that hard to figure out. All right. Another thing that Asteru says is we do not bend our knee in supplication to the gods and goddesses, nor do we beg them to do for us. Rather, we ask them to empower us to do for ourselves. We neither need nor ask for our God's forgiveness. We were not born into sin. We were born to be the best we can be. Now, do you hear the underlying pride and arrogance in this? They don't need to ask for forgiveness because they're not born into sin. They don't want to ask God for his power, for his help, for to get him through. They want to they don't bend the knee because they want to stand in their own power. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Now, there's some good in that because we don't need to be dependent on other people. We don't need to be these people that are grown up children that can't take care of ourselves. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that absolute spirit of pride. You've all seen it. I call it a Jezebel spirit, where you are so self-dependent. You don't need God. You don't need His people. You don't really need a team around you. And again, here's the T-shirt, a little bit bigger and a slightly different version. It's better to be a wolf of Odin than a lamb of God. And then now look down here on the bottom, you're going to see a ring. And I don't even know how to describe this. It's the band looks almost like a braided band, and then it has a dial on top with an Ouroboros symbol, which is basically the snake swallowing his tail, which is a symbol of Lucifer. And then it's got what kind of looks like a dial on it, and it's Nordic ruins. But if you open your eyes and you look around, you're gonna be surprised where you see this. Um, I wanna stop just a little bit and talk to you about, I'm writing a book series, and all of you know that, and try to find that page on my little thing here and get it over to you. Um I would have gotten book 6 published this weekend, but my whole weekend got wiped doing something I wasn't expecting to do. So I'm gonna try to get that out in time for Christmas. I'm gonna make it, free in the e-version for 90 days. I'm gonna go back and make Safe Haven, the first book in this series, free for 90 days. Now, you guys, I am a lady. This is my retirement program, to write these book series and get it going, also do ministry to raise the bar of knowledge. It's about healing hurting people. It's about missing and trafficked children. It's about the impact to those kids and the families afterward. It's straight up evil that is at war with God's men and women. And when you see it, it's just progressive when it starts. It just keeps going like a I don't know, an ongoing saga, and God just keeps giving more and more and more. But when you see what these people go through, and you have to ask yourself, "There but for the grace of God go I. What would I do in that situation?" And it really gets down sometimes in the heart of hearts where you have to ask yourself, "What would I do? What would I do if this was my wife, my husband, my daughter, my friend going through this? How would I help? How could I help? Would I help?" I'd really love to share this with you, and it's a great series. Go to rinalynn.com, click into any book cover, and it'll take you straight to Amazon. There's a few little readings on there. I'm very behind on my book on my website because I was just starting to build it when I had one of those life happenings at the beginning of the summer, and my entire summer was wiped doing other things. So I'm behind on my marketing. I'm behind on on all kinds of stuff, behind on publishing. Now I gotta stop making the next 2, 3 covers and do copyrights and all that stuff before I get past this one. But if you would, go to rinalynn.com, give it a try, check it out. Drop your comments in, what you think about this series, what you'd like to see coming, and, what you'd like to see in this book series. And thank you for joining me once again on Total Freedom with Rina Lynn.